Hello, Illumineers! It is time to take a rest from your quest and stop on by the Lore Keeper's Inn. Now, today is a very special episode, not only because we're going to have my wandering cryptid Olive in the background, but because we're also doing my first episode of Craftin with Katie. Now, this might be a one of one, but I still wanted to make this because recently I put this little project together and I realized that there are probably other people out there that would want something like this. So that's what this episode is to show you how to make your very own pin board to display your Disney Lorcana pins. Now, this is the best kind of craft project because it's the kind where it's really just assembling. You don't have to worry too much about skill. I picked out parts that required minimum alteration or anything funky like that. So the good news is I'm going to tell you kind of what to go buy. I'm going to show you how I did it and give you some kind of alternate options. But then, yeah, you can go out, whether you're somebody who is a seasoned craft store professional or you're somebody who's never been in a craft store in your life, you can do this project. I promise you, you have the skills available to you. A child technically could do it, but under direct adult supervision and also with adult money because you have to go buy this, unfortunately, unless you have all this stuff around your house, which honestly, some of you probably do, knowing some people's craft collections. But as far as supplies that you're going to need for this project, I got everything from one craft store. But when I think about craft stores, my biggest tip would be don't pay full price. If you're not a fluent crafter, you might not realize that pretty much every craft store has a sale. So just kind of before you go buy supplies, you might want to go see who has sales on fabric that week, who has sales on frames, because all these supplies are pretty standard. Now, if you're like, I don't want to worry about that, then yes, you can go. I got everything from Hobby Lobby, for they were the one open at the time I decided to do this project. And you can easily just buy these products, and I'll link them below if you're somebody where you're like, please don't make me make decisions. I got you. So what you're going to need is, there are these little cork sheets. So this one came in a pack of 4, and they are 12 by 12 cork sheets. Now they are kind of on the thinner side, so that'll come into play later. Essentially, spoiler alert, I put 2 together for this project, and that's ultimately because the pins are longer on these cork board pieces. So you're going to want to glue them together if that would bother you. If that's not going to bother you, then you don't have to do that. That's the glory of it is, you get to decide how you want to handle it. But the second good thing is I bought a 12 by 12 frame, and I bought the cheapest one. This one was $12. It did come with a back and glass, but I got rid of that because we don't need that for this project. But it was a 12 by 12 frame for $12, 50% off. So that was $7. The 4 sheets of cork, this was $6.50, just to give you guys an idea of what the prices are. And then the next things you're going to need is fabric. So you're going to have a lot of different options. I did, for my trial one, I went with a Lorcana space kind of theme because, it's like the great luminary. They're floating out there in space. But for this one, I'm going to use this kind of velvety. I like it because it's very luxe. I don't know if you can kind of pick up on the texture, but it's got that nice velvet texture. Kind of reminds me of my Pooh Honey Wizard outfit, which I didn't realize till after I bought it. So maybe purple velvet just speaks to me. The frames also come in different colors. There's black, white, and gold. I went gold because it matches the pins and it's just very fancy looking. So the final thing you're going to need is glue. I opted for a hot glue gun, and this is because I think hot glue guns are the most fun thing in the crafting world. I just feel so much power when I use them. The downside with the hot glue gun is you have to buy one. Now, I believe I got this glue gun set, came with the glue gun and the glue, for about $7, and that wasn't on sale. So I don't know. Why are we all not buying glue guns is a real question. But you could also use probably any kind of heavy duty glue, like a Gorilla Glue, maybe even a wood glue, E6000, which is another kind of like heavy duty glue. But keep in mind, whatever glue you use, hot glue is nice because it dries fast, but it's also harder to work with because it dries fast. The other glues will take longer to dry and it might be a little more gloopy. So it's just your own personal preference, what you want to spend money on and what you might have on hand. Now to prep, we're gonna need to do 3 separate things. We're gonna need to prep the frame, prep the cork, and prep the fabric. So the cork, like I said, you don't need to glue these two together. I just did so that way it's thick enough where they won't stick through the back. And also one of the benefits is if you do glue them together, it's flush, which I quite like. That's something that would bother me if it wasn't flush. So that's something I'll show you to do in a second. You're also going to want to prep the frame. So the frame, you just take out the glass and the back of the picture frame, dispose of in a safe manner because it's glass. And then there's going to be these little tabs. So we're going to want to break those tabs off. That's another optional-ish one. The tabs I didn't break off on this one, and they only stick out a tiny bit, but it's enough to bother me. So don't be like me, wiggle them off. I just wiggle them back and forth until they just kind of broke off. You could probably use pliers if you have that. And then the very last thing is prepping the fabric. This part is the easiest. So you're basically going to take your fabric. Now, as far as how much fabric to buy, I bought a half a yard, and then I went on a day that they were having a sale where it's 50% off. So it was like $2.50 for each of the fabrics I bought. And you're just gonna lay it where it's about, you know, an inch wider on each side, and make sure a couple things that basically it's a fabric section you like. There's no weird dents or anything, holes. And this part, this is where you need an adult. You're gonna be cutting them with scissors. But this doesn't have to be perfect because you're not going to see the seams. So don't worry too much about this part. But essentially, the fabric part's done. That's check. So the next part is just going to be gluing these two pieces of cork together. Now, keep in mind, this is hot glue. It can burn you. I am built different, so I don't fear hot glue. But essentially, you're going to want to start with one corner. Just place it down. This part is luckily the easy part. Cork is super flexible. So the way I did it is I started with one end and I'm just laying down the glue like so. And this is just to keep it together, the structural integrity of it all. By laying just a thin line of glue a little bit away from the edge so it doesn't, you know, smear out the sides. And then all you have to do is kind of go through. Like I said, it's very flexible, and you can lift up the sides and put another line of glue on the two sides you have not glued yet. The reason I'm only doing it on the sides is because if you do it in the middle, then that's where the pins are going to go, and there's a chance you could hit like a bubble. And if you do that, then maybe the pin won't go through as smoothly. So I just stuck to the sides so that way there's a very low chance of me hitting a glue deposit. So just put that together, and like I said, with hot glue gun, the benefit is it's already pretty dry and it's only been a few seconds. So that's one of the prep steps. And like I said, with the frame, you're gonna have these little tidbits, metal tidbits that hold in the frame. Like I said, I just kind of bent them back and forth and then come on. So I've got a prepped frame, I've got my prepped cork, and now my fabric. So the next part is where this is the hardest step, but it's not that hard, trust me. So you're going to put the fabric face side down. So if you have a design, you're going to put that down. In this case, it's velvet. So you're going to put the velvet side down, and you're going to lay the cork on top of it. So basically what we're doing is we're going to glue one side folded over, one side folded over. We're going to cut those two sides, and then we're going to do it on the other two sides. And what we end up with is an upholstered piece of cork. So if we start with one side and kind of work our way around, it's kind of the easiest way to keep things tight. A tip that I would give is if you're using a fabric where there's wrinkles, just iron it beforehand. If you forget, technically you could iron it on cork. It's up to you. But ultimately, you're going to start by just taking the glue and applying it to the edge. Now, I did have to reload my glue gun. Very exciting thing. I should get like one of those like bandolo, I don't know, one of those like little things where people have like bullets on their chest, like Rambo. I don't know, but I should get that with glue gun because obviously we need to reload. Now I'm using a high temp glue gun, so it will take a little bit longer to dry. So that's the good news, but I've got my little string on there, and then I can take this fabric and just pull it tight on there and kind of mash it down with my fingers, which I'm hoping is coming through nice on camera. Now this fabric does have a little bit of a stretch to it, which does make it a little funky to work with. But as you can kind of see, it's already attached. And that's the beauty of hot glue gun, is that it pretty much sets right after you glue it. So like I said, the next side is, we're going to do the opposite side next. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to put a little line of glue right on the edge. Trying to work fast so that the glue doesn't harden, but not so fast that we create a hazard to ourselves. So we're just kind of putting a thin line of the hot glue, and then we're going to take the fabric and fold it over. And this is where we want to make sure it's snug, kind of like when you're making the bed. You want to kind of make sure you pull it tight, and then we're going to smooth it down just like we did on the other side. Now, hot glue is also kind of fun because you're going to get these little weird stringies. Don't worry, they come off. Which is another thing that's nice about the hot glue, is that, let's say you get some on the fabric, usually you can kind of rub it off. But as you can see, we're making progress. We just started and we're already making great progress. I did mess up a little bit here, but there are no mistakes, only happy accidents. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim away the excess. So to do that, you don't have to be perfect. You're just going to get as close as you can to where you glued and just cut along there. Now, like I said earlier, this glue, it sets pretty fast, so there might be a few places where you're like, ooh, I didn't get glue there. You can check if there's any places where you want to add a little. Excuse me. No worries. You can take a little bit of glue and add it in there and kind of tap it down. So that way you get that tight seal. So now that I have trimmed the top and the bottom, I can do the other two sides. So now it's a little bit easier because the fabric is laid down. So I'll try to angle it so you can see the glue in action. But ultimately, you're just going to put another thin layer or thin line of glue down the side. And then fold it on up. Like I said, now it's a little bit easier because the fabric is already tight from doing the top and the bottom. So you're just going to let that seal down. Same kind of thing. If you notice you missed any spots, you can kind of go in and fill it in and put it down. Luckily, since there is a layer of fabric, it's going to be a little easier to kind of push down the glue. But like I said, if you're a child, like an actual literal child, or you don't want to touch hot glue, you don't have to do that. Or you can wear like a little glove. Either way, you can kind of mash it down and get that fabric nice and tight. And then we're going to just do the final side. Same kind of thing. You know the drill by now. And then we pull our last side tight and fold it over. So then I'm going to do my final trimming, which will just be going on each of these sides. Whoop! Looks like that was still a little gummy. So the reason I'm doing it this way is so that I have a nice clean back. So in theory, I can put mounting strips, but this will allow me to not necessarily have fabric on the back. Like I said, I do like using hot glue because I do think it is nice that it's set. If you were using some kind of liquid glue, the step would take a little bit longer, which I don't have patience, so I would not be able to wait for that. So now I'm just doing my finishing touches, just making sure we got everything glued down. And it looks like we're good. So now the reveal. Look at that. That looks so fancy. I think it looks fancy. So that was the hardest step, is getting that glued down. The coolest part about this setup and the fact that I bought these elements is that they fit in perfectly. So now that we've got our upholstered piece of cork, we can lay it in and it's a perfect fit. Now, the tricky part here is that hot glue, I keep giving you the pros and cons of hot glue, so this is turning into a lesson about what kind of glue is best. Hot glue is gonna be, you gotta work fast, and that is stressful. So I think this step might be better to use some kind of wood glue so you don't have to work fast. Not me. I'm going to use this hot glue gun because I've already invested that. Now, knowing what I know about hot glue is I do have that little bit of forgiveness time built in, meaning that this is a high temp. So I will have a few seconds before it starts to harden. So basically, I'm just going to go around the frame. And then I am going to set half of it, and then I'm going to use the power of flexible cork to set the other half. So, like I said, don't use too much because then it's going to make some gooshing out. So that would not be ideal. But if you use just a light touch of glue, then in theory, no glue should come out the other side. So I'm just going to let that dry for a little bit so that way it can get nice and stable on there. And then this other half, I can kind of hold down and lift and add glue to the second half and put down. So that's one way to use a hot glue and not get too stressed out about the time. Do keep in mind you can also kind of use the hot glue kind of like a caulk gun and put in some glue where there might be spaces so that way you can get a better, tighter fit. Just keeping in mind that, you know, you want to try to keep things level so that way you're not creating bumps on the back. So now you're watching. Don't worry about my hot glue skills. They're not great, but you know, get the job done. So now you can kind of see it's in there. So I'm going to, with one hand, hold down one side, and with the other hand, add the next part of my glue. So this one, like I said, just working not too much glue because like I said, it will come out the other side and we don't want that. Now you might have seen I got some glue on the table. That's the other nice thing about hot glue is that you can just peel it off, which is something very appealing to me, who is a messy person. At this point, we have our cork mostly tucked in, but you're going to be able to push and see that there's little areas that have give to it. So you can take your glue gun and just kind of shoot in a couple beads of glue and go along and press that tight. So that way you're going to, any kind of spots where maybe there wasn't as much glue or you didn't get the adhering that you were hoping for, you can go around and kind of spot check. So luckily, it looks like I didn't miss too many spots. Need to reload the old glue gun. So right there, I accidentally overfilled a bit, but you can kind of take the glue and rub it a bit, get any excess off. You might want to wait for it to cool a bit so you don't burn yourself. But that's another reason. Hot glue, super manipulatable. So at this point, I'm pretty much done. So like I said, I mean, that is the bulk of it. Now you're going to have a few little glue wispies that you can take off. You can kind of brush those off. But ultimately now you have your pin board ready for pinning. So like you can see here, I used a different fabric here that is, you know, a matte fabric. This one's shiny, but ultimately you're able to take the pins on and off, which I quite like. There will be little holes, so obviously you don't want to be taking them on and off every day, but you can take them off a few times and it's not a problem. And then you can take your new pin board, take your new pin board and put your pins on. And look at that. Look how nice that looks. Now it's all fancy. I'm just trying to look over the top, but look how nice it looks. I think it looks very cool. I think it's a nice way to display them. And then, like I said, you can go ahead and take them off pretty easily. And you shouldn't really have any holes, especially if you use like this crushed velvet. You won't see many holes on it and you're able to take them on and off a couple times while you're trying to get it perfect. But like I said, when you use the two, it's not going to stick out the back, which I quite appreciate. And it just looks so nice. So now you know how to do it. There's lots of fun fabrics out there. You can get plain fabrics, the crushed velvet, the cottony kind of fabric that I used on my prototype. I will say that you want to use a fabric that's not too, something where you could put holes in it and it's not going to show the holes forever. That's kind of advanced fabricking. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, kind of think about like if you had a work shirt and you're like, I'm not putting a name tag in this work shirt because it'll show forever. You'd want to avoid fabric like that. I think this crushed velvet is great because you don't really have to worry about the holes as much. You will get some holes in fabrics like this. So it's definitely something where you don't want to, here you can maybe see the holes that are left in here. So you don't want to necessarily be taking pins out over and over and over again, but it does have a little thickness in it. That's it. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, definitely let me know. You can always shoot me a tweet, or you can shoot me a message, an email. I'm happy to give you advice on maybe some troubleshooting. If you just want to talk about how much you love hot glue guns, also here to talk about it. So that was Craftin with Katie. Like I said, there is actually one more episode, but it's going to have to wait for Christmas time. So hold on for a couple months and then that episode will come out. But until the next time you see me, feel free to let me know if there's any other kind of craft things you're wanting to do with, any extra supplies where you're like, what do I do with this? I like to repurpose things. And I also like finding a way to display things that I own that maybe I have in storage. My pins are just sitting in a drawer and now they have a beautiful, lovely, permanent home that's going to go behind my desk in my office. As always, we are always happy to have you stop by the inn, no matter where your journey takes you. And if you don't know where to find us, just take the second start of the right exit and head straight on till morning. I'll be the one being irresponsible with glue guns.